So in the last video, we talked about Sony and the potential for them releasing a new handheld of some kind. And we kind of went back and forth on the idea of them releasing a successor to the Vita, but now it appears it is going to be some sort of remote play or cloud device, and we got a bit more information as to when we could even expect it to come out, as it seems like some of the sources around this are becoming more and more confident that this is an actual thing that's going to come to market, and wanted to go over that here today, as well as maybe a different perspective to take on this strange device that Sony is going to do. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button. If you're new to the SpawnWave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe it down below. So let's head over here. This is over on WCCF Tech, who transcribed and went through an episode of the Iron Lord podcast that Tom Henderson did appear on. Of course, Tom Henderson being the original source at this point of this Q-Lite device from Sony, that being a remote play handheld system. Essentially an 8-inch tablet-looking device with a DualSense controller split in half. Picture that, one side on either end of it. All right. What will happen is it will then communicate directly to your PS5 and basically play what your PS5 would normally have up on the TV, but on this 8-inch display. 1080p, 60 FPS would be the target for performance and visual and all that. But during this podcast, Tom Henderson said his sources believe the Q-Lite will be released this November alongside a slew of additional Sony hardware, which does include that rumored PlayStation 5 Slim console that would have a detachable disc drive. That on its own sounds kind of weird, right? But you can also at least make sense of that with Sony looking around and saying, well, we don't want to have two different SKUs of this system. We just have one, and then we just have an optional disk drive that will help when it comes to shipping, weight, size, all of this. And we won't have to worry about, okay, do we produce this many disk drive units or this many digital PlayStation 5 units? You release one, and then you just ship around any of these extra disk drives that people can buy separately as you need to. And you can technically introduce the PS5 at like a new introductory price point of $400 across the board then, rather than say, oh, the digital version is $400. No, the one SKU we produce now is $400. The rest, that's just an add-on. But this Q-Lite device would be showing up alongside of that, and apparently headphones or earbuds is what was being discussed. I don't doubt that either, because we have seen Sony kind of have their own line of things like monitors that still lines up with the color scheme and the marketing with the PlayStation 5. So having little earbuds, why not? It's another accessory that you would tack on to the system. And that's kind of how I'm going to be viewing this Q-Lite device if it does actually come to market. Not necessarily as a system separate to the PS5. I'm going to kind of view it as we do with a controller, maybe even like the DualSense Edge, which sort of brings it to how much would this thing actually be in terms of pricing? Well, Tom Henderson did start to speculate on the podcast. It is kind of coming to the determination that myself, and I'm sure many other people are, is that if this thing is too expensive, it's not going to make sense for most people, and they're just going to kind of walk right past it. I think the price point has to be fairly aggressive for this thing to gain any kind of traction, which to me means that it would come out and be $200 or less. I've seen some people wonder if it could be $100 or less. I don't believe so, considering the backbone attachment for your phone is $100. And that's just basically a little controller that snaps around your iPhone and lets you play the PS5 cloud-based remote play stuff a bit better than if you would use a touch screen, right? So in that case, I think they would at least price it in accordance with the backbone controller being the cheaper option. And this would most likely come in, I would assume, at the $199.99 range, right at $200. If it's more than that, and it's closer to what Logitech launched their G Cloud, which I believe that was $300 when it came out, and I mean, everyone looked at that and said, okay, that feels way too expensive, even though it does have more features than what's being described for this, because that came loaded with just Android, so you could do a lot more with it. People were running emulators and stuff on it, which, sure. But in this case, it seems like this will be locked down, as well as Sony can keep it, because I'm sure people will look into it and see if they can modify it or hack it or something, but I don't think it's going to ship with any kind of chip that is that strong or anything, and it's a way most likely for them to have better battery life and also make it cheaper. So you bring this device out at $200, which actually sits right alongside the DualSense Edge, and that kind of filling a different sort of market with the premium controller. This device, the Q Lite, would be kind of like I guess, a coffee table accessory. So I can see a use case for this, where someone who maybe wants to play their PS5 without taking up their TV for maybe baseball season's going on, or you want to watch the football game that's on in the fall and the winter time or something. You don't have to take up the TV to play the PS5. You can play this Q Lite device that is accessing your PS5, but then have your TV tuned into the game or something. And that's what I would do during football season with my Switch. I would play the Switch while also watching a game. Or even for like large families where the TV is divvied up for depending on who's watching what, but you still want to play your system. Yeah, to me, that at least makes sense to get one of these to have just around the living room or something there. Now, I do believe a way that Sony could maybe differentiate this a bit from other remote play or cloud-based systems is have some way for it to connect directly to the PlayStation 5 and kind of mirror what happened with the Wii U. Not necessarily the sales, although I feel like if Sony sold 13 million Q Lites, they'd probably be ecstatic. But no, more or less make it so that the latency is lower and the picture quality is better by not bringing into the equation like your router or the internet or anything. Be able to just connect directly to the PS5 through wireless to give you the best possible experience, and you would need to get one of these Q Lite devices to have it. But the fact that Sony has apparently so much hardware in the works right now does bring up some skepticism, I'll admit, with this device. Having a detachable disk drive PS5 coming out, things like new earbuds, and then even a PS5 Pro next year, and then also this Q Lite device. Sony is producing a lot of, I'll say, questionable hardware at that time, so we'll see with this Q Lite system. But the fact that Tom Henderson is saying, oh yeah, our sources are mentioning November as a release, well, that means that this thing would probably go into production over the summer, at which point it would probably show up with a picture from the factory and leak, and then we'll be kind of off and running to the holiday season. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Viewing this more as an accessory, like another controller, does that make more sense for its release, provided it comes out at a more aggressive price point than what Logitech did with their G Cloud? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.